Hi, my name is Yvonne Mojela. I am the fiduciary specialist at PPS. The views expressed in this are not a financial advice. Should you require financial advice, kindly speak to your financial advisor or contact fiduciary@pps.co.za. In South Africa, we've got what we call freedom of testation. Now, freedom of testation simply means you are able to distribute your assets according to your own wishes. How you can do that is through a valid will and also a review of an estate planning. So ensuring that you revise your will and distribute your assets in terms of the last will and testament. So the short answer would be yes. The reason for that is because if there are any assets that are still attached to debts, for example, if you've got a property and it's still bonded with, the bank will obviously want the funds to be settled before the property can be transferred to the beneficiaries. So yes, so if as a person that did the will, you did not make provision for enough liquidity to be able to settle your debts, unfortunately, it will affect your beneficiaries because at the end of the day, there's nothing for them to inherit. They will have to forgo the assets. Okay, so the estate duty is a tax that's payable on death. So it is payable from your net assets. So what that means is that after all liabilities have been paid, your net, if it is above 3.5 million, then 20% it is payable to South African Revenue Services, provided that that net is less than 30 million. So if the net, the other scenario is if the net estate is above 30 million, then SARS will say, can I get my 25% from there as an estate duty? Hence, it is important to have an estate planning conversation and do a revision so that you can make provisions for these costs. So one of the tools to look at ensuring that you protect the assets for the minor children. In South Africa, we know minority is when one is under the age of 18. So that is regarded as you do not have a legal capacity to act, as your own. So you need to ensure that you have a provision in place. For example, you make a provision for a testamentary trust in your will. Now, just on the testamentary trust, to make an example, it's a will that will only be established once one has passed on. So it will then safeguard the inheritance of your minor children. You can choose an age. At what age do you think they'll be mature enough to be able to manage their own affairs? For example, whether age 25 or 23. That could also, be also a tool that you can use. Even if they are older, you can still make a provision for a testamentary trust. It is not limited to an age. You can also say it can terminate when the beneficiary passes on and go to the other beneficiaries. Again, we will always go back and emphasize the review and the constant conversation of estate planning. You need to have a conversation, especially when there are any changing circumstances in your life. For example, if you've divorced, ensure that you have that conversation so that you can make provisions for those maintenance obligations. That is why you see drama. There are children from outside that there's no provision for. There was maintenance paid. Now people are fighting and frustrated. That is how you're able to make provision for that. You need to have a proper estate planning in place, which always starts with the will to ensure that you avoid the conflicts, the drama, and the anger of your beneficiaries.